Let me begin by saying good evening, everyone, and welcome to this County of Brant virtual chat about phase 2 of the Russell Heights project in St. George. And thank you so very much for taking time out of your busy schedules to join us. I know there's a lot of things that compete for your time and your attention, and your interest in this housing option for seniors initiative, your interest, of course, in your communities and in the well-being of community residents is very much appreciated. I do a fair bit of this kind of work, and it's my personal belief that people who, like yourselves, take time out of your busy personal and professional lives to contribute constructively to matters of civic and societal interest are always most deserving of our gratitude and respect. So thank you again for joining us, and I look forward, as I'm sure do you, to a productive session. For those of you whom I've not yet met, my name is Glenn Pache. I'm the head of a firm called GLPI, and it's my pleasure to serve as the independent facilitator for the meeting. So again, it might be important for you to know that I am not an employee of the county or anyone who's working directly on the Russell Heights project. My role is simply to facilitate the session. And the only bias I bring to the meeting, if you can call it a bias, is toward achieving the best result for us all. And that's what I will set out to do. Now, I'll introduce a few others in a couple of minutes, but first let's talk about what it is that we're up to tonight. And you'll hear more about this later, but really simply put, the County of Brant is in the early stages of planning phase 2 of the Russell Heights project at 50 High Street in St. George. And the project is intended to provide more attainable housing for seniors. And the initiative is essentially an expansion of what's already being offered on the site and is intended to fit seamlessly within the community as phase 1 does already. Now, as mentioned, we're early in the process. There are still a number of unanswered questions, but notwithstanding these uncertainties, the county, very much to its credit, wanted to reach out to the community to share some information. And that's what tonight is all about. This really is an opportunity for members of the community to learn more about the initiative and to share value-adding questions. And by the way, tonight's session is being recorded. And that's being done for those who may not have been able to join us this evening. This way we have a record that can be posted and they'll be able to review it at a time that is more convenient for them. Now, we have a number of objectives for the meeting tonight, and they're reflected in the session agenda, which is as follows. We're obviously in the opening remarks component right now. I'll also provide a bit of information about how you can participate in tonight's online meeting, and I'll cover a few housekeeping items as well. In a moment, I'll invite Mayor David Bailey to provide some words of welcome, and then the county's project coordinator will provide a brief overview of the project and where things are at in the process. Then we're going to do something a little bit different. Rather than the traditional, 30, 40-minute presentation, which you'd probably find, less than exciting, we're going to have a casual panel conversation, a fireside chat, if you will. And as the facilitator, I'll be putting questions to our panelists, whom I'll introduce just a little bit later, and I'll be inviting them to share their responses and to build off one another. But more than that, we're also inviting you to share your questions of factor clarification, which we can also, time permitting, put to our panelists this evening. And more about how we'll do that just a little bit later. But we'll look to address as many questions, again, as there is time for. And by the way, we're looking, again, to be respectful of your time, so we'll try to wrap things up by no later than about 7:30 or so. At the end of the panel discussion, we'll talk about next steps and we'll outline the range of opportunities outside of this session that are available to you for providing comments and any other observations or questions. As I mentioned, phase 2 of the Russell Heights project is in its early stages. There will be other opportunities to learn more, to stay engaged, and so forth. And the team recognizes the importance of understanding different points of view and harnessing the best ideas from wherever they may come. Now, some people sent questions in advance of the session, and our speakers will try to address most, if not all of them, this evening. So really simply put, again, tonight is about making you aware of the phase 2 of the Russell Heights project, its purpose, what it will include, what it will look like, and so forth. It's also about providing information to help keep you informed and up to date. It's about providing an opportunity to participate in the process by asking questions, and of course, by us outlining other avenues for sharing comments. And it's about speaking to next steps and where things go from here. So before I go any further, a few words about the nature of this Zoom session. Now, some of you are experts. You've probably used Zoom many times. Others might be using the platform for the first time this evening. So bear with me while I go through just a few basics. Again, as a reminder, the session is being recorded so that the content can be made available to those post-session who aren't available this evening. So that's the first thing. Secondly, for those of you who have not used Zoom, I'll just briefly describe its functionality. As an attendee in this webinar, you cannot be seen nor heard by us or by anyone else that is participating. If you want to send questions that you would like to see put to the panelists this evening, please use the live Q&A icon on the panel, typically found at the bottom of your device. But again, it depends on the kind of device you're using, whether it's a computer or a smartphone or a tablet or whatever that might be. This is your way to engage with us during this virtual town hall. Again, during the session, questions can only be submitted by using the Q&A function. And the image, perhaps we can put it on screen right now, will help you to find that function depending on the type of device that you're using. So we'll see if we can put that slide up for you in a moment. Now, our moderators will be queuing the questions to be put to our responder panel during the Q&A part of the webinar. You can adjust the size of the presentation screen and the speaker screen by using the toggle between both screens, and you can do that to get it to your preferred size. If you do have any pressing technical issues, please write to us using the Q&A icon. But if your issue is that you can't access the Q&A, then feel free to email gary.porter@brant.ca. So that's Gary, G-A-R-Y, .porter, P-O-R-T-E-R, @brant.ca. And one of our technical moderators will try to assist you. Now, for those who may have chosen to simply dial into the meeting, in other words, you are using a simple phone and not a computer or a web-enabled device or a smartphone, you'll be able to listen to the discussion, but not share any questions. Okay, so keep that in mind. But if you do have questions about anything you're hearing tonight, and if you are using a web-enabled device, please feel free to share them, again, using the Q&A function. Don't wait until the end of the meeting. Send them as they occur to you. Again, we have some Brant staff who will be assembling those questions for us. And again, if due to time constraints, we don't get to all of them this evening, be assured that they will be documented as part of the process. So let me take a moment to very quickly introduce the panelists that you'll be hearing from in just a couple of minutes. And I'll invite them each to sort of unmute, put their videos on, and just say a quick hello so that people can put a face to the names. And let me begin with our esteemed mayor, the County of Brant Mayor, David Bailey. Go ahead, sir.
Well, thank you, Glenn, and thank you for helping us out again tonight. I am thrilled to be here, and on behalf of the County Council of Brant, I'd like to welcome you on. Thank you for taking the time to be with us. I see there's 50 people on the call, which is amazing. That's a lot of interest, and I'm glad to see you all here. I know that Councillor Howes is on the call. I don't know that any other councillors are, but Councillor McAlpine is probably here too. I just don't see his name. But anyway, this is a wonderful opportunity for us to get your ideas and your opinions so that the second build of Russell Heights can be exactly what it should be, especially the people that I know are on the call from phase 1 of Russell Heights. You have a better insight of what is lacking from maybe Russell Heights the way it stands now. And your information is very important to us because you live there and you understand the workings of the building, and any of the downfalls that are there now, we don't want that to carry on to our second stage of the build. So I hope there's lots of you on the call tonight. Again, I can't see your names, but I'm sure you're here. Exciting times. It's going to be a very exciting time for the whole county. We're in a very boom-like phase of the county right now. There's things happening everywhere. So I'm looking forward to how we do this. I'd like to just take the opportunity right now to thank the staff for moving so quickly on this project. And I'm sure that it's going to be an evening full of information. And I hope that everyone speaks up and is heard tonight. So thank you very much. And we'll let Glenn carry on. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So let me introduce a few other folks. We have Pam Dusling, who is the General Manager of Development Services with the county. Pam?
Good evening, Glenn, and hi, everyone. Happy to be here.
Great, thank you. And we have Jessica Kitchen, who is a planner with the county and also the project coordinator for the Russell Heights Initiative. Jessica?
Good evening, everyone. Excited to be engaging with you about this project this evening.
Great, and we also have Graham Cubitt, and I'm going to give him a little bit of a longer introduction. He's not a Brant County staff person. He is the Director of Projects and Development with Indwell, and Graham and Indwell have helped shape housing developments that meet various community needs. And Graham is also the president of Flourish, which is a not-for-profit development consultancy recently launched by Indwell to share its expertise and to help create critically needed attainable housing projects throughout Ontario. And Graham and the Flourish team are working with Brant County to help achieve the best possible outcomes for the Russell Heights project. Graham, did you want to say a quick hello?
Hi, Glenn, and everybody. Thanks for this opportunity. We're very excited to be working with such a great community and such a great team of people to realize the visions that a lot of people in St. George and more broadly have had in mind for a long time. So really happy to be part of this conversation.
Thanks, Graham. And as the mayor mentioned, I understand that we also have a number of other esteemed elected officials, and I believe Michael Bradley, the Chief Administrative Officer or CAO with the county, is also listening in this evening, and it's great to have all of you join us. So just before I invite Jessica to give us a very brief project overview, Mr. Mayor, was there anything else that you wanted to add by way of welcoming or opening comments?
No, other than the fact that I'm very excited that Indwell is going to partner with us at least at an advice stage. They've done many projects like this. I've been to their projects. They have wraparound services that we can talk about a little bit later on, but they're very good at doing what they do, and I'm very glad that we've chosen the right partner to move forward with in this second phase of Russell Heights. So thank you for being here, Graham, and thank you for what you do.
Great, thank you. So now I'll invite Jessica Kitchen, again, the project coordinator from the county, to provide just a very brief overview before we launch into the panel discussion. Jessica, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Glenn. And as Glenn mentioned, I am Jessica Kitchen, a planner with the County of Brant. and I'll be helping to coordinate this project throughout the process. As we all mentioned, we're excited to be discussing the second phase of Russell Heights with the community this evening. This project began by identifying a site that could work for an attainable seniors housing build. Ensuring that this could be a county-owned development was also very important in the beginning stages of the process. And addressing any matters relating to land use to ensure that the project could move along smoothly was also an extremely important step. So, which brings us to our next step in the process, which is this evening's community discussion, which also is coupled with our detailed design review. So this review will really look at the overall function of the site. It will include things like traffic, also grading and drainage, parking, placement of the building. All of these elements will be considered throughout this detailed review process. It will also ensure that this build is consistent and does meet all of the development standards that we need to apply in the County of Brant. So, well, all of the details, like Glenn kind of mentioned already, have not been finalized as of yet. We're really hoping that sharing this project open and early with you in the process will assist in creating something that we can really be proud of as a community together. So with that, I will turn it over to Glenn.
Thank you, Jessica. So given that time is of the essence, let's move to the main item for the evening. And as mentioned at the start, we're going to dispense with any formal presentation and focus instead on having an informal conversation with our panelists. And given that it's February and that it's cold outside, we're sort of thinking about this as being a kind of fireside chat, and hence the virtual background you see for some of us in the meeting this evening. And again, we'll use a question and answer approach to get at some core information about the project. We'll be inviting our panelists, and I've already told them all of this, to offer their frank responses to a series of questions. And in the spirit of kind of like a jazz ensemble, to riff off of each other, to pick up on each other's responses, and to challenge one another if they feel differently about something. We're very much interested in having an authentic discussion and you know, being real and keeping it real. So again, I'll remind our panelists that we encourage you to do that. And a final call again, if you do have any questions you would like me to put to the panelists that I'm not asking on my own, please do send them in again using the Q&A function. We will try to work them into the conversation, but send them as they occur to you, and as they're submitted, our question moderator will be reviewing them to identify those that might be very similar in nature with a view to addressing any duplication. And in some cases, we may consolidate multiple questions into a single one. So please don't worry if the question being asked or posed this evening isn't exactly as you may have written it. Okay, why don't we get started? And Jessica, you gave us a little bit of information about this already, but I'm going to ask you to go a little bit deeper. What is the project all about? So for those who, you know, may not be familiar with Russell Heights and, you know, what exists there today, what is phase 2 all about?
Sure. So thanks for that great question to start us off here, Glenn. So really what this project is all about is possibly adding some further attainable housing to our community for seniors and those with disabilities, in addition to the existing building that already exists on the property. It could also help as well to ensure that all of our residents in our community have a variety of housing forms available to them, allowing for supportive issues like aging in place.
Great, thank you. Maybe I'll put this next couple to the mayor to kick us off anyway, and others can join in, but I know that the mayor has a great passion for this. Mayor, what do you believe the project will mean for the County of Brant? And more than that, what might it mean to the immediate community of St. George and its residents?
Well, what I think it will mean to the County of Brant is it will give us the ability to see how well this one goes, so that people in the St. George area can stay in the St. George area when they want to downsize or when they want to sell their properties and move into something that's obtainable and affordable. And I think for the county, what it shows is that we can do this again in all the different parts of the county. We can do it again in Burford. We can do it again all over the county, so that people that live in a certain area or a certain part of the county can remain in the county and not have to be displaced to something in the county that isn't familiar to them. So I think that everyone's going to be watching Russell Heights and how we do it and how we can make it affordable. And then if it all works out the way I know it's going to, because we have all kinds of people working on behalf of the county right now, all doing their own thing very well, we can do it all over the county so that people can stay where it's familiar and where it's familiar to them and affordable to them. So I think everyone's going to be watching this second phase of Russell Heights.
Graham, it looked like you might want to jump in there. You've done these in a number of other communities. What do you think this might mean to the County of Brant and to St. George and others?
I think, building on the mayor's comments, the ability to stay living within your community is just so critical. We know for success in life, and you know, I've got parents who are aging, and they actually decided to build a house in conjunction with my brother and sister-in-law, because that ability to stay near family, to stay near supports, to stay within a community that that you can age successfully has been very, very important. And so having additional options being built in St. George for renting an affordable and accessible place, particularly accessible apartments, we know are not readily available. So there's a number of reasons why I think the project is just so exciting for area residents in Brant County.
I'll invite others to jump in if they have anything to add. But anyone else, anything to add in terms of what this might mean to the community and to the county? Go ahead, please. Jessica, Pam, anything? Okay. Oh, go ahead, Jessica.
Oh, I was just about to say that I think both Mayor Bailey and Graham did a great job there answering that one.
Okay, and we'll talk more about the positives and how this can really be of great benefit to the community. But let's also talk about some of the issues that might be on people's minds. I can imagine, for example, that people who are neighbors to the property or who live, you know, immediately adjacent to it might be wondering about things like noise and dust and vibration, you know, the kinds of things that occur during the construction of any new entity. So what are we imagining can be done with regard to mitigating and addressing some of those concerns that, you know, are more than likely on the minds, again, at least of those who live immediately adjacent to the property?
Sure. So I'll jump in here, Glenn. So great question, and something that I would definitely be concerned about too if I were abutting the property or definitely living within the neighborhood. So in terms of items such as debris, mud on the street, these types of issues are typically all looked after under the road use bylaw. And during capital projects that the county typically undertakes on a regular basis, it's not uncommon to have the street and right-of-way swept on a daily basis during construction, just to help out a bit with that. And I think that noise was also in there as well. So project hours that are typically restricted for construction would be along the lines of Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. And then also on Saturday as well, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. And then that excludes Sundays and holidays, which are days which typically construction wouldn't operate on. And again, the noise issue would be looked after under the noise bylaw. And then we also have the ability as well, when we get into authorizing a contractor to work on the project, when we actually undertake an agreement with them, we can also assist with mitigating traffic moving through the neighborhood. We can dictate specific routes. So for example, with this one here, we could say that 50 High Street, the actual site, could only be accessed via High Street. And that would need to come down through Main Street to High Street. just to try and mitigate traffic as best we can and alleviate any concerns that the residents may have or annoyances that come along with construction.
Well, and Jessica, if I can pick up on the traffic component, we've already got a couple of questions in from attendees asking about that. So can you quickly review for us the number of units and how many people you're anticipating that might bring to the area, and whether there's likely to be any traffic flow related issues or any I'm loath to use the word congestion, but any traffic related issues that might need to be addressed?
Sure, absolutely. So in follow-up to what was just mentioned, so the overall build out for Russell Heights, the property itself, that pertains to the zoning on the property, which allows for a maximum of 60 units. And that does also include the existing building, which has 25 units in it currently. So this leaves about 35 units for us to consider through this particular project. With that said, that's the maximum that we could do on the site. Through the detailed development review, we'll get into the actual physical layout of the building internally, how many units it ends up being. That's still to be determined. As well, traffic issues, that's always a good one. It's always on people's minds when it comes down to development. This will be something that will form part of that detailed review. We'll definitely get into that. Our operation folks are closely assisting with this project, and they'll definitely be interested in those numbers as well, and making sure that all of our roads can handle this further development and infill project.
Great. Let's get Graham in as well. I know he's had experience with constructing projects of this type and has some ideas about how it can be done in the most context-sensitive way. Graham, what are some things you've employed in the past or that might be used for this initiative?
I think it's a question. Jessica made the point that all of us would want to have these kind of questions answered if we were living next door. Picking a reputable contractor who's familiar with conscientious operations is key. Right from the get-go, making sure that they're aware of those restrictions and the expectations from the county. Also, some of the strategies that we're looking at, deploying around modular construction, being able to produce quite a bit of the building off-site in other, in factory or in other areas, and then be able to move it to the site and assemble it should really reduce the amount of construction noise, dust, and indeed the length of the project on site. So those would be some of the areas that we're looking at right now through the design process to really minimize the impacts on neighbors and indeed on the environment.
Well, Graham, let me put another question perhaps to you and or Pam, or both of you might want to jump in on this one. Some people are wondering, how long will the project take? Like, what are we looking at for construction from start to finish? And I know it's early days, I understand that, but do we have any sense as to when you think this project might begin in terms of the work occurring? So again, Graham, Pam, please, either of you.
Go ahead, Pam. Yeah.
Sure. Thanks, Glenn. It's really hard to say how long the project will take because nothing's carved in stone at this point in terms of timelines. The county is actively seeking funding to assist with this development. So if the county receives funding quickly, the timeline will be much shorter. So I would say at the earliest that the community would see a full build out of the phase 2 would be March 2022. It could be possible that the project starts construction this April, but again, nothing is carved in stone at this point because it is dependent on funding. There are 2 processes right now they're being undertaken. One, as Jessica mentioned, is called the site plan process, and that's a review of the building property. It includes things like parking and setbacks and landscaping and lighting. Walkability, and that's what we're chatting about tonight. The second process is, of course, the building permit process, and those 2 things can happen in tandem, and that, of course, is the detailed design of the building and construction. So again, those 2 processes can take anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks. So again, construction could begin, let's say, in April. It could be completed in March 2022, but again, those timelines are not carved in stone at this time.
Great. Thank you, Pam. Graham, anything to add, or has Pam covered it all?
It covered everything I was going to say. We just had experience building a little bit larger building than this. It was 50 units, and it took 18 months conventional construction, so no off-site modular or anything like that. So somewhere exactly within that timeline Pam was talking about is very reasonable.
Let me go back to our sort of transportation safety related questions. We've got another one that's come in from an attendee, and they're asking, are there any new safety measures planned for the busy intersection at High Street and Main Street? And they've noted that walking across the street can be difficult for some who use canes and walkers and so forth. And then they're wondering, is there anything that could be installed on the street before traffic reaches the corner to either stop it or slow it down and so forth? And I know that one's probably out there a little bit in the future as to whether you are looking at making any of those changes, but Pam or Jessica, is that something you would be thinking about, that you would be taking into consideration?
Sure, so I can definitely jump in. So as you mentioned, Glenn, because we are still a little ways out here from having a lot of the details sorted out and finalized, we don't necessarily have a plan that we can share directly with and speak to that question and give it a solid answer this evening, but that will definitely form part of that detailed review, that site plan control review that we're into. And as we go along in the process, that's exactly the type of details that we'll be looking to consider and finalize and ensure that if there are added safety measures, our operations team will be sure to be all over that and get whatever we need to get in place to ensure safe crossing.
So we have a couple of questions about what's being proposed more specifically. And let me put those to you, and then we'll talk more about the site and the amenities and so forth. But somebody is wondering, where specifically on the property will the building be located? And secondly, there's a related question, will the addition be attached to an existing building so that people can go from one to the other? Will they have to go outside? So again, where specifically will it be, and will there be connectivity to the building that's there now? And I don't know, Jessica, Graham, is one of you best to answer that one?
Sure, so I'll jump in and I'll start off. So we do have some rough concept drawings drawn up. These did illustrate the possible additional building going to the west of the existing building on the property. So I will stress, though, that these drawings are not finalized. We're definitely still considering different options and placement for the building, whether or not it would be connected to the existing building. That's a great point to raise. So we're happy to consider that going forward through, again, that detailed design review.
Graham, anything to add?
Yeah, no, it's going to be situated sort of off where there's like a lower graveled area right now. So utilizing the part of the site that has always been envisioned as the next phase, and then utilizing that area in such a way that it really doesn't dramatically negatively impact any of the existing amenities on the site. So really taking into account trying to preserve trees, access, really minimizing the digging into the hill there. That's sort of at the back of the lot, really keeping parking facing away from the street, and so it's not like a big parking lot in front of the building, that kind of thing. And also making sure that because it is focused on improving accessibility, et cetera, that the building is accessible both from the parking lot and from the front area where there's a lay-by intended, so that when people pull in, they can just park right off the front there and drop folks off or get deliveries, et cetera. So really trying to focus on maximizing the usability of the site, the aesthetics of the site, and the functionality, while minimizing disruption, to the physical site that is there and that everybody's familiar with.
I know you've done these in a number of different areas, Graham. And you had mentioned to me you have some sort of precedent images of what's been done elsewhere. If you, again, I'm not putting you on the spot, but if you're able to call one or two up, if you wanted to share them with the group, maybe in a couple of minutes, just let me know if you're able to do that and share your screen. That would be great.
Yeah, sure. I can take a look at pulling some photos up there and then see if I can share them through the software here. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, if you're able to.
Give me a second. I'll pull some up and I'll come back to you on that. Yeah.
Yeah. In the meantime, let me put a couple of questions to Jessica. People are interested in knowing what, if any, community elements they might expect to see incorporated into the project. More specifically, again, what will the project look like? Are there any sustainability or sustainable design elements that are going to be built in? So tell us a little bit about that, Jessica.
Sure. So that's a great question. So as we kind of mentioned, we don't have a design necessarily finalized as of yet, but we do have architects working on our team to help us out with the overall building design. Sustainable features will be considered through the project review. And so we'll be looking to hopefully finalize that as part of the site plan control process. I know Graham's working on pulling up some images there for us so that hopefully we can share some sort of concept drawings with you about past projects. This particular project as well, I should mention, we've actually had some preliminary conversations with our Parks and Facilities Department, and they have already been considering things like a pickleball court or shuffleboard, gazebos, outside areas to assist with enjoying the outdoors, getting out, of course, safely and accessibly as well, keeping that in mind. Looking at pathways and landscaping, like I think both Pam and Graham had mentioned as well, will also form part of this. So again, while we haven't necessarily nailed down a ton of these details, this is exactly the type of discussion that we were hoping to have with you this evening. And these are some really, really great suggestions that we can take back to the design team and start to really consider and dig through them as we progress.
Graham, any luck with being able to share your screen or?
Yes, I think so. Let me just see. It says I can't share it while other participants are sharing. So I'm not sure if that's the background maybe, or if there's another way I should get permission, but.
Well, why don't we'll see if Gary can maybe work on that, and we'll see if we're able to come back to you. Let's continue with some of the questions. Thank you though, Graham, for looking that up. So somebody's wondering, does Brant County have any other apartment buildings or structures similar to what Russell Heights is now? Or will there be with the, or will, what does that say? Or will be with the expansion? So Jessica or the mayor, are there other things like this somewhere in the county?
So I'll jump in. So really the existing building on the property is a low-rise apartment building specifically for seniors and those with disabilities. So it's pretty unique in the county. We do also have some other developments, but those are probably quite a bit higher in height than what we're looking to probably consider for development on this particular site. We're considering something around the 3-story mark, pretty consistent with what's already existing, but also including, again, that sustainable design element in there as well. So I hope that answers the question there.
Thank you. Graham, go ahead. Something to add?
Yeah, three stories would be the max that we're really designing for right now, and just recognizing the height of the existing building and the sort of scale of the site there, and also in terms of like accessibility. It will have an elevator, of course, but also making sure that, if somebody wants to use the stairs, it is a moderate climb to get to the top floor if one wants to use the stairs. So keeping that low rise kind of feel for the neighborhood.
Thank you. So another question, some people are wondering, why is this project being undertaken now? Like, what's the impetus? What's the drive behind this? And in fact, some are asking more specifically, what supporting evidence is there that you need to build another structure of this type, that you need something like this in St. George? And they've gone on to say a few years ago it was determined that there wasn't enough need, and so forth. So what, if anything, has changed? Why is this required now? And I don't know, Pam, if you want to kick us off, maybe the mayor wants to jump in as well. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, thanks, Glenn. I would say that, you know, the project's really being undertaken now because it's time. There's a strong need for attainable housing in the County of Brant, as there is for really all of Ontario right now. And additionally, this proposal could provide housing for those who are currently experiencing prolonged waitlist times. As of 2020, the affordable housing waitlist for Brantford and Brant County remained at an all-time high, and that was over 1,700 active applicant households, and this has doubled since 2010. So there's evidently a need in the county and the city with wait lists, and that also goes along for seniors. In 2019, the County of Brant had approximately 319 seniors on a waiting list for housing. So this number is based on Paris and St. George and Burford combined. So the second phase of 50 Russell Heights really will provide an opportunity to grow on an existing development that works within the county and the community of St. George. So there is a need for not only affordable housing and attainable housing, but also housing for seniors.
Mayor Bailey, anything to add? Go ahead, sir.
No, and I think we've been talking about this for so long, and you know, when you get to be a certain age or your health starts to decline or something, and you see a waiting list that is unattainable, or a waiting list that just takes the wind out of your sails because you just think, you know, time is of a premium and the wait lists just seem undoable. People make maybe bad decisions or other decisions because they just feel the timelines are just not conducive to their situation. So I think this is going to be a good thing. It's going to make people feel better looking into the future a little bit, knowing that there is going to be provision for them. And when you live in St. George too, there's other little communities, Harrisburg and Glenmorris, people that are not really in the village of St. George, but do things in St. George, get their groceries here, do things like that. So there are a lot of rural side roads and things that are also being brought into this component too. So it's not just the town of St. George proper, but it is all of the neighbors that are included in St. George, even if their postal codes aren't the same. They are familiar to us, and they're very much part of the village of St. George. So I just think it's going to make the wait lists seem more attainable.
Thank you. So Jessica, maybe back to you. There's a couple of questions here that I think are related. One is, how can we be sure that the property and the buildings will remain dedicated to seniors? And yet we also have someone asking, would the county consider designating some of the units, perhaps a percentage of the units, for people with disabilities? So not just seniors, but people with disabilities. I realize those can be the same people. You can be a senior and have a disability, but I think this question is intending to say, would you let non-seniors in who have disabilities? So a couple of questions there. How do you make sure that it's kept just for seniors, or would you consider opening it up for people with disabilities?
So this is a great question, Glenn. So through the current site-specific zoning that is applied to the property, it's very detailed. There's some site-specific requirements as far as setbacks and lot coverage go for the site that were considered very specifically back in 2009 when the site-specific was applied for a twinning out of the existing building, if you will. And so going forward, some of that language speaks to very specifically, again, seniors and those with disabilities. So that's something that we're looking to preserve through this project. That's not something that we're looking to change at this time. We're not looking to open the zoning up on the property and make any changes to either that specific wording or any of the site-specific development requirements. So I hope that answers the question. We will be looking to consider all different types of design elements internally to accommodate, seniors and those with disabilities. But as far as the actual zoning itself goes, it just has that specific wording in it there that we will continue to work with.
And there's a somewhat related question, and Pam, maybe this one best goes to you. Some people are wondering who will be eligible to apply to live in these units. Will it be limited to just those from St. George or from the county or from where? And has that been thought through yet?
Thanks, Glenn. That's a hard question to answer at this time. Typically, we work with our service provider, the City of Brantford and Health and Social Services, for those that are or have been waiting for some time for housing such as this. Of course, we want to facilitate and meet the needs of our current residences in the County of Brant, but all of those things are still yet to be determined.
Thank you. Jessica, you sort of talked about this earlier, but why this site? Why is the project being proposed for this particular property?
So this particular property, and I think I kind of touched on it in the last question or answer there, but this particular property has always been envisioned for another building on the property to service seniors and those with disabilities. So this property is designated, it's zoned, it has municipal servicing allocated specifically for another building on the property for this particular type of development. So it's very fitting that at this time this project is being discussed, and the potential of it moving forward is greater now probably than when it was initially discussed, which is fantastic. Also as well, and I think the mayor maybe touched on it a bit, but having close supportive uses like grocery stores, pharmacies, restaurants, parks, community centers, all of these things just go hand in hand with this type of development, and they just really complement it, and I think it's really important.
This is an example of one of our recent projects. It's somehow I'm not seeing the photo myself, so hold on one second. Okay. So this would be an example of a recent apartment we built. It's a one-bedroom apartment in this case. It's got a nice living room area. The bedroom would be off to the right. The kitchen is off to the left. My wife and I actually lived in this apartment for a little bit when it first opened after Christmas, and we really enjoyed it. It's very, very light-filled, large windows, obviously, lots of natural light coming in. And the washroom is off to the right here, standing from the front door. This is the entryway into this building. This is called McQuestion Lofts in Hamilton. Nice large lobby area, elevator access, of course. This would be another example of a lobby in one of our buildings where some large-scale artwork, some interesting design features and things to really sort of augment the history of, to augment the building's aesthetic, but bring the history of the building into the everyday environment there. So, and this would be another example of one of the apartments in a project we opened last summer. Each apartment really is designed to be very livable, and we have a lot of experience from the last number of sites we've worked on around flow and how kitchens work and seating areas, living room areas, bedrooms, to really try to make sure that those spaces are livable for the long term. I know that sometimes social housing, so-called social housing, can have the stigma or the idea that it's poor quality, etc. But we're really focused on making sure that not only are we building like all of these designs, and Russell Heights would be an example, to a very high quality standard, but also like an aesthetic that is durable and that people want to live in. So this building, for example, is North End Landing. It just opened in Hamilton this summer, and it's just very, very beautiful, and fits into the neighborhood. And each building, in a sense, is designed to respect the neighborhood. So obviously working with the team at Brant County, and indeed feedback that we get from the community and from neighbors who are already living at Russell Heights would all be fed into the design process, which, you know, Jessica did mention is at the early stages right now in terms of the actual physical design. So it's not too late to make any changes there.
Well, this is a great time to ask you this question, Graham. Somebody was wondering, because we've used the term a couple of times, sustainable design. What do we actually mean, or what do you mean when you talk about sustainable design elements? What is that?
That's a very important question, because it can be just a buzzword. Oh, it's sustainable, or, you know, it can actually be imbued with a lot of meaning. What you know, from Indwell's experience and what we're working on with the county is really building a building that's going to be good and efficient and durable for the long term. And we know that we all have a role to play in sort of environmental responsibility. So how does the building use electricity? How much, you know, emissions from the building? So designing it using passive house standards would be one of the key strategies to really eliminate the emissions from the building and really promote high quality living environment. Indoor air quality, you know, especially with the pandemic, we've realized the importance of being able to not have lots of air transfer between apartments and things like that. So making sure that there's like great indoor air quality, making sure that it's a very comfortable living environment. Even simple things like noise, you know, with passive house strategies, triple glazed windows, very well air sealed, so there's not a lot of noise coming through the wall from outdoor traffic, etc. And having lived in some of these apartments that we've designed myself, you know, I can attest to the fact that they're very comfortable, very quiet spaces, and we've really appreciated the times we've been able to stay in these apartments. So really right from the very beginning of the design through the materials that are chosen and in the layouts to, you know, the quality of the materials like windows, making sure that at every turn we decide on approaches that help minimize the environmental impact and maximize the built quality and the lived experience for the tenants who are going to call these apartments home.
Great, thanks, Graham. Pam, maybe I can come back to you with this next question. Earlier, you painted a pretty compelling picture of the need and the sort of why now for this project. Somebody is asking specifically whether there has been an assessment of community need, but more than that, has there been an assessment of community resources that would be available for people who might be moving into these units? So whether that's transportation of one kind or another, or medical care services, health professionals, and so forth. Has any of that kind of assessment been done?
Thanks, Glenn. Great questions. There's lots of resources, I think, within the County of Brant and neighboring municipalities that we can look further into. At this time, none of those details have been completed, but as Jessica's outlined, we are working with a number of different departments and divisions within the county. We're looking for different resources. We want to make connections in the community, and those are things that we're willing to hear, and we're wanting to hear from the community so that this development can be the best that it can for the community residents.
Well, maybe I can ask Jessica to pick up on that. What ability will people have to get involved, to continue to be engaged in this initiative as it goes forward? How can they plug into this?
Sure, so I'll definitely follow up on that. So well, this isn't your atypical Planning Act application in the sense that it has a statutory public meeting in front of council where the community would typically get involved and submit comment. Tonight is really the jumping off point for community involvement, consideration of comments, feedback, ideas. We definitely were hoping to get a lot of feedback, which I think that we have pretty successfully so far this evening, which is fantastic. But we're hoping that you'll continue to work with us on that. So we do have a landing page developed for the project, and it's accessed through www.engagebrant.ca/Russell Heights. And we'll have that up for you later on a slide when we wrap the session up. But we are looking towards hearing all of your comments, feedback, your ideas. You can connect back with me personally as project coordinator as well. And we are going to leave the commenting period open for this project to the public until February 26th. So we really did want to give you some time to get your feedback, comments, and ideas into us. And we know that in light of the pandemic, that's not always the easiest of things to do these days. So we're definitely willing to work with you on that. Please just reach out and connect with us.
Great. Let me go back to Graham, if I might. A couple of sort of construction, design, building related questions. You mentioned earlier, Graham, I think that it would be a maximum of 3 stories. I think you said that. Somebody is wondering how high the structure would be. So can you translate that for us into meters or feet, just roughly, so they've got a sense of it?
Yeah, we know that the feeling of the space indoors, it's really important that the ceiling heights give a sense of space and openness. I think if you were to, so we typically would shoot for better than an 8-foot ceiling in the apartment. But now, of course, there's like always the structure, the joist or the deck for between floors. And if there's any ventilation, there's always like a little bit of variability there. So if you used a 9-foot multiplier, it'd be about 27 feet high, or 10 feet, it'd be about 30 feet high, or 30 feet would be 10 meters high, roughly. So something in that area would be the overall height. We are looking at having the roof be a flat roof structure. So just to minimize sort of how the apparent height of the building, but then also to maybe be able to have some of the mechanical systems and things like that up and out of the way, keeping that visual appearance lower as well. And there's always the potential, depending on the local local conditions, and it has to be modeled a little bit, as well as like what electrical services, but the possibility of adding solar to the roof, depending on the type of roof, just to add one more of the environmental efficiency features into the building, which can be beneficial for the long term.
Another quick question for you, Graham. Somebody's asking, has there been any consideration given to having a gated entrance/exit? Now, I'm not sure how you're interpreting gated, but please jump in and share any thoughts, or if others want to jump in, please do so as well.
I can't say that has been a consideration. I don't recall anybody bringing that up as a question yet. So it might be something we can talk about in a design meeting.
Okay. So somebody's identifying a potential inconsistency in what they've heard from our panel. So let's check in on this. Somebody is saying that they understood the mayor to have said that this would be for people in our community, but that Pam also mentioned that it would be open to anybody on that waiting list from various places. So can we just clarify that for our attendees and participants this evening? And Pam, maybe you're the best one to jump in on that, but Mr. Mayor, feel free to jump in as well. Go ahead, Pam.
Yeah, again, there's no set details right now, but we do know that there is a need for, again, affordable, attainable senior housing, and that's really defined by the Brantford and Brant Municipal Housing Master Plan Initiative, which covers the years 2020 to 2030. And that is undertaken by the service provider, which is the City of Brantford, with input from the County of Brant. So some of these outcomes are really based on the Mayor's Affordable Housing Task Force, which has just recently been concluded. So with all that being said, we're not quite sure how or who will be living in this development, but we know that there is a great community need, and that is our focus.
Mayor Bailey, anything to add?
Well, what Pam said is true. You have to remember that Brant County is 3 times the size of the city of Brantford. So there's a very big difference between Onondaga and Harrisburg. It's a big distance. So everyone is certainly familiar with their own parts of the county, not like the city where it's all one city. So if you want to go to Lorne Towers, or if you want to go to Eagle Place or other places in the city of Brantford, the distances aren't as obvious, and you still come from Brantford, where the County of Brant is so huge that's why this build is so important locally, because when it does work here, and I know it's going to, we can do others in Onondaga or other parts of the county, which will make them just as comfortable to be there as it's going to make the people in this area to stay here. And although the city and the county are shared services for housing, this is very special because Russell Heights has never been part of that mix or never been part of that inventory. So this is very much a county deal and a county facility. And it's our first one that we'll be doing on our own without the city. And because it's, as you know, the old workings of Russell Heights was with a board of directors, and it was not ever in the inventory of the city of Brantford, County of Brant shared services. So this is sort of, as I said, people are going to be watching this build. And when it does work, it's going to be very, very exclusive to the County of Brant, and it's going to work on so many levels. Well, we'll have to wait and see, but I think it's going to work on so many levels that we're going to get very comfortable with building these units the way we're going to build them, and many more will pop up quite quickly.
So somebody's really thinking ahead here, and maybe it's somebody who's in the first phase of Russell Heights, but there's a question asking, will occupants currently living in the present building get priority or have priority if they want to move to the new building? And again, we might be way ahead of ourselves there, but Pam, Jessica, Graham, anybody on that one? Has that even been thought about yet?
So I don't think that we've even thought about that. That's a terrific point. That's something that maybe I would want to know as well if I were residing in the existing building on the property. That's definitely something that we can give some further consideration to as we progress, for sure.
Graham, some more questions about design. I think you've touched a sort of, not a nerve, but you've piqued people's interest here with what you were saying. Some are wondering what design features will be implemented so that adults do not feel like they're living in a, quote, retirement residence. In particular, if they're, not that old, so to speak, if they're relatively young. So what kinds of things, you mentioned some already, but what other kinds of things could be done in this instance?
I think that's a great question, and I think that the answer would lie in, who do we imagine moving in there? So your last question about would folks from next door want to move in? I know from our while I have no input on who the waiting list should be, I know from Indwell's experience that we often have a huge interest internally for people to move into new apartments because, they're new, they're nice, they're beautiful, colors matter, it's not builder's beige or tan on taupe, that kind of like, I've gotten to the end of all the options in the rainbow, so I'm just going to go with boring. There's real options to design a building that feels like it's very alive, that feels like it's a great place to come home, that's warm and inviting, but doesn't feel worn out the day it opens. And I think that we like to focus on the details, things like the color temperature of the lights, so that you just really have this sense of feeling like you're home rather than in an institution or any kind of like other. It's not a retirement residence, it's an apartment, and you feel like you're in a home that you'd want to call your home rather than in a home like where you don't really want to call your home. I'm kind of getting lost in metaphors there, but I think that's really, really key. And I mean, we haven't picked the colors or things like that yet, but the goal would be to have a building that feels like it's a future, not feels like it feels like an end. Yeah.
So let me pause for a moment to say a couple of things. First of all, thank you to all who have provided questions so far. They've been very much on point and very thoughtful, and we appreciate that. We're moving into our last 20 minutes or so. Again, we're looking to wrap up roughly around 7:30 or so. So if there are some other questions, if you want to send them along, again, we may not get to all of them this evening, but we'll do our best to shoehorn in as many as possible. Maybe this next question best goes to the mayor, but there may be others who want to jump in. And again, I know it's early days, but do we know who will own the building, who will own the property, who will be the operator or the service provider once it's been built? Go ahead, Mayor.
Yeah, no, the county will own the building, and the county will operate the building. And the other piece to that too, Glenn, is it's a very safe location. As you know, we're going to have a lot of growth in St. George in the next few years, next maybe 6 years, whatever. This piece of property at Russell Heights is very, very safe. The way that the subdivisions are sort of around this property already, it's not, no matter how big St. George grows, the people at Russell Heights will never be in any more danger or caught up in any more traffic or anything like that. It's a very secluded little place, and we've always known that when we did build again, it would be there. So we've provided, I think people were worried about we didn't have any water or we didn't have any services because we're stretched to the brink right now in St. George, but we've always provided services that we always knew that this building was going to happen. So although you may have heard that we have no water or we have no capacity left to build without doing other infrastructure, we've built this second build into our original infrastructure. So there is enough water there. There's enough everything there. This is what they call shovel-ready land. So we're very fortunate to have this, and we're very fortunate to have it in such a safe place. Goodness me, like there's nothing else that can get any closer to Russell Heights than the neighbors they have now, and it's working very, very well. It's the neighbors that should be worried. With all these seniors in this new build, it would be the neighbors that should have reason to maybe put the for sale sign up. It's not going to be the seniors. It's going to be a wonderful place to live and a wonderful place to be. And if we can, I never thought about joining the two buildings there. There's something for you to think about, Jessica and Pam, is having the two buildings joined at some point so that for bad weather and things, they don't have to go outside. That's a wonderful idea. But no, it's a very safe place, and it's going to work out well. And the services are already there, so don't worry that we're not going to have the capacity, because we have it already.
Thank you. And Jessica, I don't know if this question best goes to you, but somebody is asking, would this phase 2, would it be a mix of market rate apartments and lower income apartments? Has that been figured out yet?
So that's something that we're still readily discussing as a team. That's something that we'll definitely flush out through the process as we continue to progress with this project. And we'll be happy to share those details as well along the way with the public. Again, we want you to engage with us, and we want to continue to be engaged with you throughout the process. That's something that we're adamant about, is transparency with this project. So as we begin to kind of finalize more of these details, we'll look to bring those to you and to make those readily available to you.
And Graham, I wanted to give you the opportunity, not to do an ad for Indwell, but some people are wondering, who is Indwell, and more specifically, what's your role or Indwell's role in this project? So again, not an advertisement, but can you tell us a little bit more about your organization? I know the mayor spoke very highly of the work that you do at the beginning.
No, thanks. Well, and we appreciate your comments, Mayor Bailey. And we know that, Indwell's been around for about 45 years as a not-for-profit, a charitable organization based out of Hamilton, but we have programs now operating, reasonably locally in Simcoe and in Woodstock. We're expanding into Kitchener this year, and we have a program in London. What we've realized over our years is that many families, many households really do need to have an affordable place that they can live. It's next to impossible to attain a decent, quality, safe place to live in so many communities now with the pressure on the real estate market. And there just hasn't been a lot of purpose-built rental housing that's been created for some time. And so over the years, we've realized that combining affordability that's sustainable for people whose incomes may not change regularly, and access to supports of various kinds. Usually it's supports that are already existing in the community, but may not have been able to be tapped into. When you can combine those two, you can really create a high quality of life for people in permanent homes. So in our conversations with many people and organizations throughout Brant County, we've realized that Indwell's past experience can help come to bear on the discussions that the county is making now around building on land that's within a program the county would operate. And so this is where it's a sort of a new foray for Indwell to create this ability internally to take our experience and translate that outwards. We have it's a new company we started called Flourish. It's sort of an arm's length organization of Indwell, but it's our whole team just operating in a way that we can help provide advice and give guidance. And in this case, Indwell wouldn't be operating the building, it'd be the County of Brant, but in many respects, it would be the same quality, design, and execution of the commitment to building the kind of homes we'd all want to live in and be able to afford in communities right across Ontario.
Well, let me pick up on, you just mentioned the word afford, and in the questions and elsewhere tonight, we've been using language like attainable housing, affordable housing. What is the difference between those two? Can somebody make that clear for our participants and our attendees? I don't know, Jessica, are you the right person, or Graham, or both of you, if you want to tag team on that?
So I can definitely start us off and talk about truly what these two terms mean when we use them with respects to planning policy and governance and housing and development. So they're often used interchangeably, which can be a little bit confusing for sure. So affordable housing is targeted to low average income earners. For example, those who earn minimum wage or individuals who are receiving government assistance, such as seniors or people with disabilities. The concept of affordable housing includes adjusting the cost of housing, rental, and ownership in relation to income earned. So that's affordable. Attainable housing is a wider equity of housing options and ownership styles to provide more opportunities for households who have been priced out of the market, like I think Graham just touched on, or are struggling with higher rental rates as well. So we've seen both, and we're starting to see both on a regular basis. So I think it's important to distinguish exactly what we're talking about. I'll let Graham jump in with his knowledge.
No, I mean, you kind of hit the nail on the head, Jessica. The reality that we hear every day now is it's a matter of attaining, as in actually achieving a place to live, and the need for many households, regardless. It's not just people who are like on social assistance or have very low incomes. It's many people are struggling to find a place to live, and particularly a place to rent. When life changes, or you're downsizing, or you've worked your whole life but never really had a pension. You've always been. Many people who've worked in the nonprofit sector or other areas of the economy that didn't have a company pension or something, get to retirement and realize that they can't afford $2,000, $3,000 a month, which is often the price in many kind of retirement communities nowadays. And so how do you attain housing when that's your circumstance? And so these are complex questions, but the solutions are not singular. There's got to be many different angles to answer these challenges, and in a project like this really is providing an avenue to support 35 households who could attain housing in a great community. To the mayor's point, to live in a community that we'd all actually kind of want to live in, but really be able to make sure that financially that is affordable for the duration, for as long as somebody wants to live there, without relying on an ongoing subsidy or some other kind of monthly government intervention in their housing costs.
And just to confirm, because there was a question looking to clarify this, we are looking at 35 units. Is that correct for phase 2?
Yes, that's correct, Glenn. I can confirm that. So 60 overall, we have 25 units in the existing build. So that leaves 35 units maximum to be considered for this potential development.
And another design related question, but it's kind of exterior design, if I can put it that way, rather than in unit or in building. People are wondering about the landscaping. What at this point are we imagining doing from a landscaping feature perspective? Or again, maybe it's too early to comment, but Graham, do you want to kick us off on that one?
Sure. I mean, we haven't gotten into the fine grain of the landscape planning, obviously, with the landscape architect or detailing the trees and the bushes, but we know that the site right now has some lovely trees. So how to minimize disruption to that? How there's the sloping hill towards the back? How do we minimize disruption to that by sort of backing the building into that hill in a sense, in some of the areas that are there, being able to put services and things into that lower story that's in the hill. That also would create the ability to have accessibility right off of the parking lot into the first story of the residential area. From the street, the way we've imagined it so far is to have a sort of a lay-by, an ability to pull off the street to create sort of a safe stopping area for pickups or drop-offs or those sorts of things, and of course, for fire access and services, being able to have great access in terms of being able, if you're riding a bike or using any kind of mobility, scooter or such, being able to just drive that right into the building through a designated door, and having that indoor parking for those kinds of vehicles. It's really, really critical, especially now with many of the advancements in electrically powered or assisted personal mobility devices, to be able to bring those right indoors for safety and charging, etc. So those would be some of the features. Really trying to, even for the parking lot, making sure that it's well laid out so that anybody who is driving, has good access and can be able to park up through the existing parking lot. And then from when we get to the point of actually planting new trees, bushes, plantings, etc., really trying to create an environment which is quite beautiful and aesthetically pleasing, because tying into some of the woodlot there behind, etc., and taking advantage of some of the natural features that are already surrounding the site.
Great. Are there any plans that people can review? Some people are wondering, is there anything that they can look at yet?
So I think that we all kind of had touched on it at some point during tonight's discussion, but we do have some concept plans that are rough. They are subject to change through the detailed design review. But we can definitely share those with the community. We can share drawings with the community as we move forward, as they change in the process. That's definitely what tonight is all about. It's just the first step in our communication with the community about this project. So we'll continue to bring that forward as we progress.
Well, to that point, Jessica, and I know Pam's going to talk about next steps in a little bit, but some people are wondering if there'll be future meetings detailing the outcomes of this session, or that speak to any design changes you might be making to the building. They're also interested in knowing how they might be able to be involved in the governance relating to the development and so forth. Who's best to speak to those questions?
So that's definitely something that I can touch on. So as far as future meetings or future even design trips, or how we reach out to the public to continue to discuss this project, that's definitely something that we'll need to consider after tonight's event. I think that, and I don't want to get ahead of myself here because I know we're not wrapping up, but I think tonight's event has been pretty successful just in participation and involvement, which we definitely appreciate. And we'll continue to reach out. Again, we have the landing page for the project set up through the engagebrant.ca/Russell Heights platform. So that's where we'll look to readily share information going forward about this project in the next few weeks. And then As far as if we set up another meeting to further discuss drawings or design elements, governance elements, any of the details that have been touched on this evening, we'll definitely ensure to give the community a heads up before that actually happens to ensure that you can readily participate. We know that things are changing almost every day with the pandemic, so we'll be on top of letting you know and getting you involved for sure. And I should mention, just a quick shout out, we do have some support staff in the background. Nicole Campbell's helping us out tonight to keep track of all of the questions so that we can hopefully post those on the platform as well and let you know that we're hearing you, and so that we can also get back to you and respond to the questions, just in case we weren't able to chat with you this evening or answer you live.
Yeah, we appreciate the help from Nicole and all of the County of Brant staff to help make this a success. Okay, we're into our last 5 or 6 minutes, so let's go into rapid response mode, because we want to leave Pam with a few minutes to talk about next steps towards the end, and also to let the mayor share any closing observations he might have. Somebody is wondering whether you were considering any upgrades or enhancements to the interior of the phase 1 building, so the current units, so that they would blend more with the overall look and feel of what's going to be done in phase 2, or what's proposed for phase 2. Has that been given any consideration yet?
So Glenn, I can jump in maybe here. It's my understanding that phase 1 has yet some internal renos to be completed. And those will be ongoing in the next short term. But externally, site-wise, the 2 buildings, or if they are connected in the end, we absolutely want to make sure that they fit together, they fit with the overall community as well. So those are things that we're considering as part of the site plan process. And again, if there are suggestions or comments by local residents or community members, please send them our way.
Okay. And Graham, I think somebody was asking about community spaces within the building itself. Can you tell us anything quickly about that at this point?
That's a great idea, and I think that right now we've already started to plan in some community spaces right off the front entrance, having some community rooms, some places to gather outside of one's apartment, maybe for get-togethers, for events. Lots of things happen sort of in a building like this to bring people together outside of each person's home. And so having that design right in from the get-go would be an excellent idea. We'll take that back.
Great. So somebody is noting that they heard Mayor Bailey talking about the growth that's taking place in, say, or is proposed to take place in St. George over the next number of years. And they're wondering where residents can find more information about that growth or the growth plan. Jessica, can you speak to that? Or if the mayor wants to jump in, whomever, please.
Sure. So our development planning team usually here in the Paris office, they are all over reviewing plans for development and future development and growth for the county. So they can better assist with any questions that the public may have about specific plans, whether they be plans of subdivision or areas that are slated for growth or development, infill projects, any of those questions. Our development planning team would be happy to help, and they can also be reached at planning@brant.ca. And if you would like, you can reach out directly to me. I'm happy to connect you with the rest of the team.
Great, thank you. So I know we're bumping up against 7:30 and we want to be respectful of everyone's time. So let's look to wrap things up shortly. First of all, a heartfelt thank you to all of our panelists for sharing your responses this evening. And I also wanted to thank again everybody who shared questions. I think we got through most of them. There may have been a few that we didn't get to, but again, there's a commitment by the county to respond to those, and as Jessica said, to post some of those answers online and so forth. So we'll make sure that they're addressed one way or another. I wanted to thank everyone again for your interest in tonight's topic and for listening to the conversation. And again, a special thank you to those who submitted questions. If we didn't get to your question, again, I'm a bit of a broken record, but I want to just say again, be assured that the team will be reviewing them. They will be providing responses and so forth. So let's move to a quick overview of next steps. And I'll invite Pam Dusling, again, she's the county's General Manager of Development Services, to tell us about where things go from here. And then I'll invite the mayor to share any quick final thoughts, and then I'll draw things to a close. And we'll do all of that quickly. Pam, go ahead, please.
Thanks, Glenn. I too would like to say thank you to everyone for their comments and suggestions and ideas tonight. This is truly just the beginning of the conversation for development on this property. It's very exciting. It's a maiden Brant County project, and I can't say enough that we do appreciate those comments. We want to hear more of your ideas, and we will be taking them into the next steps of the development process. It's a little uncertain where the process will lead us next, and that is really because we're waiting on some funding news. This project, we're seeking funding assistance, and we're waiting to hear from some hopeful news in the next coming weeks, and that will really determine our timelines and next steps from here. We do know that the site plan is ongoing right now. We know that the building permit is forthcoming, and we will be connecting with the community and providing them more information on timelines and what the design looks like and how they can get involved. But I would say that right now, Jessica Kitchen, our planner, who's done a lot of talking this evening, she can be reached via email at jessica.kitchen@brant.ca or by telephone at 519-44-BRANT, extension 3031. And we also have our Engage Brant platform, and you can visit us at engagebrant.ca/Russell Heights for more information. Again, the public engagement portion of this project will remain open until February 26th, and we want to hear all the good ideas and comments and suggestions, and we're happy to answer further questions one-on-one, and Jessica is definitely the person to connect with. So again, thank you, Glenn, and thank you to our panelists, and we couldn't be more excited about this community project.
Thanks, Pam. And again, some of you will have noted there's a slide up on the screen now that provides some of the information regarding what Pam just took us through. So before I formally wrap things up, I'd like to invite Mayor Bailey to share any final observations that he has. Go ahead, sir.
Well, I'd like to thank everyone for taking the time tonight to it. I'd like to also thank my council for being so supportive in this project and for allowing us to move as quickly as we're going to try to move. After these COVID days are behind us, I have a vision of Russell Heights with a community garden and lots of places to walk and to be out and to gather and to talk and to get to know your neighbors, and benches and you know, when this is all behind us, which is coming sooner than you might think, because you know, we've gone through a whole year of absolute everything is quiet, and people got quiet, and when it's all over very shortly, it's going to be a time to celebrate and to gather. And I see Russell Heights as being a piece of property that's going to be very relevant to that stage of our lives, where we can just walk and talk and gather, as I said, in community gardens, and just any reason to get together and to know your neighbor. And that's what's going to happen at Russell Heights. It's absolutely perfectly located to do all the things we want it to do in the County of Brant. So thank you for everyone that's making this speedy in the way that it can be speedy. I'm very hopeful for the grants and for the help that's going to come to us. And Glenn, thank you again for getting us through another evening of information in the only way that Glenn can do it. And you aren't a broken record. You're just very efficient. So thank you for everything you do.
Oh, you're very welcome. And I just wanted to say that it's been a real pleasure facilitating this session with such a thoughtful and knowledgeable and articulate group. And again, the caliber of the questions that were coming in was terrific. So thank you again to all of our attendees, our participants, for sending those along. A reminder, do please stay engaged. This is the beginning of the conversation, not the end of the conversation. And Jessica and Pam have outlined a number of ways that you can do that. And as the mayor just did, I would also like to thank all of our elected officials, not only for joining us this evening, and I know we had a number of them who did so, but also for their ongoing and very valuable contribution to the success of the county and to the community. So again, if you have further questions and comments, do send them along to the various places that Pam mentioned. And thank you to all of the personnel who made this session possible. Thank you to all of you for your participation. Enjoy the rest of the evening. Be safe, take care, and good night, everyone.